Hello there, this is Maurine Kwende, your podcast host, and you are listening to the Empowerment Minutes podcast. It's a podcast to empower you with nuggets on learning and development, training, leadership, coaching, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. I am a learning leader, researcher, speaker, coach, consultant, and author of the book, Dream Big and Live Your Dreams Boldly. I am the CEO and founder of EMK Learning Solutions, LLC. I have had the honor and I still help and coach aspiring instructional designers and trainers to become better leaders. So if you need help in that area, I'm more than happy to help you. It's exciting, yes, to be back on the show this week for another empowering episode. And I would like to get started by saying thank you so much for listening every week. Last week, we missed publishing an episode because I was out of state. I traveled, but I'm happy to be back this week with another episode. So thank you so much for listening in every week. This keeps us going and means a whole lot to me and the other listeners. So thank you. This month on the podcast, the focus is on aspiring managers and leaders. So for today's episode, it's about success keys, how to transition from an individual contributor to a first-time manager. So you already have a job as a first-time manager, and this is your first job as a manager, right? So how do you go about it? How do you transition to become a successful manager? This episode would cover what it takes to transition successfully to be the manager you want to be remembered for. So let's get started first by defining what an individual contributor is. This is an employee who contributes to your team but does not manage other people. So a common misconception is that individual contributors are early or they're just getting started in the field, but that's really not true. Sometimes you have individual contributors that, they have a lot of experience. They're really not necessarily entry-level workers. So I thought I'd just put that out there. So what are the keys then to help you transition to successfully to a first-time manager? Not in any particular order, but the first thing that comes to mind is vision. To transition from individual contributor to manager, you need to have a vision. What's your vision? As a manager, you're thinking of we as a team and no longer as I, the individual contributor. What does your team need to be successful? What are your talents? And what are the talents of your team? And what changes do you need to make? Where do you see yourself as a team down the road in a few years? What challenges are you experiencing or do you foresee to experience? And how do you plan to overcome them? That you have to work with a team. So this might be daunting, but you need to learn how to connect with your team and build trust. And you can do this by sharing your story. So what's your story? How did you get there as a manager? By sharing your story, others can connect with you, and through common ground, they can connect and start building a relationship. As a successful manager, very soon you start delegating work to your team. Maybe you've not done that before. So how do you successfully delegate work? This means that you first have to work on your communication skills. I love this book by John Maxwell titled Everybody Communicates and Few Connect. And that's true. You can communicate all you want. Everyone can make a call, send an email, have a conversation. But do you really connect? You need to learn to communicate and connect. Those two things are very important for you. So once you learn those skills, and which one of the ways to communicate and connect is by finding common ground, which I shared earlier on about you sharing your story. Another way to communicate and connect is through humility. In a past episode, one of my guests shared about leading with humility. Right? Once you're humble, people connect with you even more. Perhaps my next tip is about finding your leadership style. I cannot emphasize this enough. What leadership style do you identify with? I'm hoping you don't identify with authoritative or positional leadership. When I remember my very first job as a manager, oh my gosh, I was a positional leader. And I made so many mistakes and I learned from them. And let me just say, when you know better, you do better. And that's why you're listening, to learn from our errors and learn from our experiences so you can be a better manager. Right? So I encourage you to listen to earlier episodes, and where I also shared about the 5 types of leadership. Remember that leadership is influence. Choose a style that will positively influence your team. What type of a leader do you want to be perceived as? Think about that. A good learning and development manager or in any other field works on projects all the time. So I encourage you to learn project management and people management skills. Project management helps build soft skills like communication, problem solving, plus even skills that you need like budgeting, because you need to start learning how to budget, work with your stakeholders. So leading projects really encourage you to take ownership of something, which in turn can help you become more confident and engaged at your work. So I encourage you to really work on your project management skills. Learn to become a great project manager. You can take classes. You can go to the Project Management Institute and learn how to take even some certification, or even learn from your peers who are project managers. One thing I also want to share is about leading from the heart. It's not about telling people what to do. I want to encourage you to truly care about your people, care about your team. From there, you can easily build trust. I know it's not easy, doing this for the first time, but I know you can do it. You got this. So these tips are all I have to share for this week's podcast. Next week, I will discuss common challenges that first-time managers experience and how to overcome them. So we've come to the end of this week's podcast. To close, here are some final thoughts. As an aspiring manager, this might be your first job, but think about 5 years, 10 years down the line. And if you were to ask some of your team members, what would they say about you as a manager? How would they rate you? In a nutshell, what do you want to be remembered for as a manager? So lead with the end in mind and start today. And I want to wish you the best in this new job, okay? To our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to this wonderful episode. I hope you found this very useful. And please share with your network. Thank you so much. Be safe, be well, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.